and if anyone who's thinking about selling their business is think about the fact that this might very well be a large part of your identity. And when this goes away, now you're going to have to start over again. And starting over again is very fun, but it's also, you shouldn't underestimate that you have something and this is your baby. You have like control over it. And then now it's like, okay, we're going to go and do that again, and just be ready for that next step, whatever the next step is. I think too many people sell their business and it's like, now they've got a ton of cash, but it's like, well, what do I do now? Like, and have that next step planned out. You know what I mean? That's what I would say.
Hey guys, welcome back to the ZonCon podcast. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Erickson. We are here today with Anthony Cofrancesco. He is one of the he is a industry liaison from PickFu. PickFu is a really fun website we'll talk about, obviously, mostly in this interview. But to give Anthony a little bit of an introduction, Anthony is a serial entrepreneur and digital nomad, so he's a man after my own heart. He has started several businesses in the travel hacking, photography, and marketing world. He even worked at Amazon for a little bit early in his career, so he's an ex-Amazon employee, so he knows some of the inside secrets, I guess. He is now, like I said, working for PickFu, and PickFu is an online platform that allows people to run polls and get unbiased customer feedback, so they know exactly how to improve their listings. The best part of PickFu is that all this feedback happens in a matter of minutes. It's a pretty cool little service. So how does that sound, Anthony? Is that a good intro for you?
That is a great intro. Thanks so much, Andrew. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to talk to you and about PickFu. Before that, though, I do have to hear digital nomad, right? I think we all, just to define for everybody, digital nomad means you're kind of like, as long as you have an internet connection, you can live and work anywhere, right? So where are you based right now?
So yeah, this has been a kind of a strange year. Right now, I'm in Maryland on the East Coast of the United States. Normally, I live full time in the Philippines in Manila. I traveled to an Amazon FBA event last year, all the way back in March. And when I left, I haven't been able to get back to the Philippines since then. I literally can't get back. So I've been kind of moving around a little bit. I've been living in Brazil most of this year in Florianopolis, which is the capital of Santa Catarina. But I just came back to the States to do my COVID vaccine because they're really easy to get here. So I got my COVID vaccine, so hopefully be able to travel. And yeah, that's the story.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I am also fully vaccinated and I love it. I love it. It is makes life feel more normal now. So it's good. So I saw your Instagram account. If you guys want to follow Anthony, why don't you give the handle out for everybody? He has some pretty cool stuff on his Instagram.
Yeah, sure. People can check me out. It's at Anthony Cofran, and it's mainly just a lot of drone flying and fun explorations.
Yeah, and you have the most recent stuff is like some drone footage over the Brazilian beaches and stuff. It's very nice.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about being a digital nomad? Like before the world kind of sucked this last year, what kind of place, where have you gone, and what are some of your favorite places you've gone to?
Yeah, so I mean, I really started maybe about 4 years ago. I remember I took my first real international trip. I took it out to Thailand, and I thought after 2 weeks, I was like, this is amazing. You can really arbitrage your currency if you're making kind of Western dollars and living in a developing country. And I was really, really stuck and sold on it at that point. Though I wasn't at the point where I felt confident to do it. So like I went and worked for Amazon for a while, and then eventually was like, okay, I gotta get back into being location independent. And so over the past few years, I've gone a lot of places, done a lot of things. I would say that my favorite place I've ever been is Iceland. If you've never been, like I've been to more than 50 countries at this point, and Iceland is always going to be number one at the top of that list. It's probably one of the most unique looking places in the entire world. Just you're going to go to different things and see things that you've never, ever seen before. Second on the list behind Iceland is going to be Egypt, because it's one of those places that you just think about since you were a kid. And when you actually get there and you see the pyramids and you see all the different artifacts, it's super surreal.
Wow, I love that. Those are actually two countries I've never been to. Longtime listeners might know that I started this podcast when I was on the road. When my wife and I actually were doing like a full year traveling abroad, we hit 32 countries inside of 12
Wow.
months.
Holy
So we
cow.
did the whole wham bam, thank you, ma'am kind of tour. We have a little baby now, so the traveling is harder to do. But
Yeah, I feel that.
we never hit Iceland or Egypt. We hit Israel and Ireland. Those are kind of close,
Pretty
but not
close. Pretty
exactly
close.
there.
I've been to Israel, but I haven't been to Ireland. Yeah. Super. It sounds like a fun trip.
I was shocked at how much I loved Ireland. I kind of had low expectations because I don't know, it just didn't seem very foreign to me. And when we got there, it just was like an amazing place with rolling green hills and blackberries and sheep and everything. It was great.
Right. Right.
I learned I drove a stick for the first time there,
Yeah.
manual shift stick drive.
Yep.
And I also drove on the wrong side of the road, the left side of the road, for the first time there.
Yeah, no, I feel that as well. My first time driving manual transmission was for a trip that I took to Slovenia because I knew there was only going to be manual cars, and I had a friend teach me, and always fun. It's something everyone should learn how to do.
Yeah, there are like no manual cars anymore in the States, and they're still really common overseas. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a legal thing or just Americans are lazy or what, but it's
Probably
not
the
very
latter.
common in the States anymore. Another question I love asking travelers is what was one of your favorite surprise countries?
Yeah, so probably the weirdest one. Also, the only trip that I was like, I'm ready to leave was going to Haiti. I had a brilliant plan that, I just want to see every country in the world at some point. And so Haiti was obviously on the list. And so we had a whole plan that we were going to go and spend 3 days in Port-au-Prince and then do a land border crossing over to the Dominican Republic. And that was an intense trip. I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen, I've lived in developing countries, but I've never seen anything that's that quite intense. And then we didn't even end up making it to the Dominican Republic in the end because we took a bus to go across the border. And the day that we were trying to go across, there was, I guess, some really intense violence at the border. And they're like, yeah, no one's going across. So they had to take us back to Port-au-Prince. And I remember I was traveling with a friend at the time and I was like, I'm out of here. Like, let's just go back to Miami. Like, this is not, I mean, it was intense stuff. I mean, more poverty than you've ever seen. Just you're walking around and you feel very isolated too. Like I travel to other places in the world and you feel like, hey, maybe I can blend in. Like you can't blend in at all in Haiti. Like everyone's just looking at you. You're walking around and they're like, you're not here. It's very uncomfortable. So yeah, that was a little bit strange.
For our audio listeners, Anthony is a bearded white guy, so maybe that's why you stand up.
Guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I stick out. And I was with like a very, very tall white female as well, and like everyone's just looking at her as like, yeah, not the best.
Wow, we've never been to Haiti. We went to Dominican Republic, and we love the DR. But I've heard that the DR and Haiti are drastically different places.
Right, vastly different. Yeah, it's just like trash everywhere. It's like very like I've been to a lot of places. I've never seen any place as developing as Haiti.
Yeah, it's tough seeing those places. Like a lot of the developing places, I like experiencing them. I like, especially some of the places that are fast developing. I'm like, I want to be here and see it growing now, right? So Thailand's one of those places. Vietnam, Philippines, a lot of the Indonesia. Those are all like pretty fast developing places. But some other places we went. There were some rough places in the Philippines we went, and then Cambodia and Laos were all pretty underdeveloped places that were pretty shocking to us.
Yeah, I personally actually like the whole developing aspect. I sometimes if I'm in areas that are a little bit too nice, I'm kind of like, this is why I came out here. It's kind of a little bit like the Wild West. It's a little bit, I do enjoy that a lot. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So how'd you get connected to PickFu?
Yeah. So basically the story there is I worked for Amazon. I worked there for about a year. And then the guy who had actually taught me how to sell on Amazon, one day he gives me a call and he's like, hey, I've got this creative agency in Manila. Why don't you quit your job and move out to the Philippines? So I was like, this is kind of crazy. I was a college dropout. I had a very good job. And but I knew I would end up regretting this if I didn't, change my trajectory. So I helped scale that creative agency over a period of almost 2 years. scaled it to more than 30 employees, and then we exited that business in 2019. And so one of the services that we used heavily at PickFu was at the creative agency rather was PickFu. And so I had met John and Justin, the founders of PickFu, at a conference in Vegas at Prosper Show. And so after I had exited the business, I made a little bit of money, but not enough to like never work again. And so I hit up Justin and John and I was like, hey, I would love to come in and help out with PickFu. At the time, and even up until recently, I think like many people have heard about PickFu, but it was like pretty low penetration, and it was still kind of like an insider hack that really advanced sellers were using and not a widespread tool. And so I was like, hey, I love traveling. You can send me around the world to conferences. I'm not married. I don't have kids. Like you can just put me out on the road and I'll get the word out there on PickFu. And I pitched them on that and they're like, okay, come join the team. And that's what I've been doing for a little over the past year.
Nice. That's awesome. Wow. So I want to dive in a little bit more into that exiting your business though. You have the marketing agency. Tell me more about it. You built it up, 30 employees, and then just sold it, or what was the mindset going into that?
Yeah, so I had built that over a period of 2 years. When I first got there, it was maybe about 8 employees and just doing photography and graphic design. The whole business started out of a need. My business partner was selling on Amazon and wasn't really happy with the results from Fiverr and from Upwork. And so decided, hey, I'm going to create my own agency. But it wasn't ever really for an agency. It was really just for your own employees to, service your own listings. And, it's all a pretty tight knit community. And so eventually your friends start saying, hey, can I contract you out? And so, when I got there, we were just doing photography and graphic design. We scaled it up to everything for the listing, kind of a one-stop shop. So photography, design, video, and copywriting. So really doing everything, and really built that out. And then there's a lot of aggregators in the space now, but one of the original ones is a company called Alpha Rock Capital, and they happen to be based out of Southeast Asia. And it was just kind of the right place, right time. They were looking to do an acquisition mainly for strategic reasons, to say, hey, we want a team that can service our entire portfolio of brands. And so it was one of those things, when it's happening, you're like, oh my goodness gracious, I can't believe I'm actually going to sell a business. But probably some of the most stressful times, like leading up to that and directly after. And you're just like, I remember drinking a lot and, just, oh man, it was so, but once it goes through, you're like, you just felt like you're on top of the world for a couple of weeks. And we sold the business, and that business is still around. They changed names, but they're still taking clients, and had some good aha moments on like looking back at it now. But yeah, that's
like what kind of ahas?
I guess one thing that I would say is that, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people that have sold their business, and there's always this time that happens after you sell your business. Like you look at the cash and you're like, okay, I'm going to get paid. It's going to be a good payout. But then afterwards, it's like, what do I kind of do? And it's like, you've got this money, but it's like, well, what does money get you? And I think a lot of us too, that are digital nomads, we're going and exploring the world in different ways. It's like, the money is at some point, it's like, it's just money, right? It's like you realize this traveling and living in different spots of the world, that money is all relative, and it's not really real in some regards. It's just like, if you wanted to work as hard as you wanted to work, you would make an unlimited amount of money, right? And it's just an input of that. And so I think if I had to do it over again, I think I would really, and if anyone who's thinking about selling their businesses, think about the fact that this might very well be a large part of your identity. And when this goes away, now you're going to have to start over again. And starting over again is very fun, but it's also, you shouldn't underestimate that you have something and this is your baby. You have like control over it. And then now it's like, okay, we're going to go and do that again, and just be ready for that next step, whatever the next step is. I think too many people sell their business and it's like, now they've got a ton of cash, but it's like, well, what do I do now? Like, and have that next step planned out. You know what I mean? That's what I would say.
Nice. That's good. That's a good little observation there. It's something we think about, because we're hoping to exit some point soonish. And our big plan is just to sell our big main brand, and then just continue on to, we have a second brand that we're building up now. And so just jump into that second brand, and then hopefully just keep doing that. So I guess you found yourself, you have this little exit and you find yourself rich and unemployed. Are you just like looking for something to do, and then you jumped into PickFu?
I took maybe about a month off, but I put together a list of, I asked a mentor and I was like, hey, what do you think I should do? And I had done travel hacking and hospitality in the past. And it was just by the very luck that a mentor of mine was like, look, dude, you're crazy to get out of e-commerce. You should definitely stay in that industry. And I almost took a job helping to scale a really fast growing chain of hostels in Thailand. And I almost did it. And I'm so glad I didn't because, everyone knows the story with COVID, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, with PickFu, I took about a month off, and then I had a list of companies, and I applied, and people know this because I applied to their company. I applied literally everywhere in the e-commerce space. I put in a ton of applications, but PickFu was always at the top of the list. And it just happened that the owners were super open to having me on board. And I was really excited because it was a clear fit. The guys who started PickFu they come from an engineering background. And so they're a little bit more introverted. They're like, this isn't, and versus me, this is, you don't even have to pay me to like go and do this. Like, this is what I've always dreamed about doing. And so it was a natural fit. And I'm just super fortunate and humbled that they were like letting me take such an active role in growing and scaling the business.
Nice. That's awesome. So let's I want to tell everybody that PickFu is one of my favorite services. It's a fun little different service than most of the other things that I use. So obviously there's PPC management, and there's this, that, and all these other things. And PickFu is like this special, and there's always like competition too on those other ones.
Yeah.
There's 25 different types of PPC services, and there's 25 different agencies to like do listing optimization stuff or copywriting and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe we won't talk about if there is competition, but as far as I can tell, it's like PickFu is like this own little special island of like uniqueness in this industry where you can set up. Well, why don't you tell us, maybe not give me a good little intro of what PickFu is. Tell us kind of like the little elevator pitch of what PickFu is.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that, and this is the whole reason why I joined with PickFu is because exactly what you're saying, like very low level of competition. PickFu is nothing new, right? Companies have been doing market research literally since the beginning of time. Like, we all know about focus groups and detailed market research. Big brands, Nike and Under Armour, when they're launching a product, they're spending significant amounts, sometimes a low six figures, just on market research, just for launching a product. And so the only thing that PickFu does is it says, okay, well, the normal average third-party seller or just a regular small, starting early stage entrepreneur is never going to be able to afford market research. They don't have six figures to say, to go and invest on market research. And so PickFu was like, how can we democratize market research and make it accessible to normal business owners and starting out entrepreneurs? And that's really where the whole idea started. And so biggest applications that we're seeing people use are for e-commerce. So things like testing images or testing branding, copy, things like that. But as well, we're really big in the mobile game space. And it makes sense, right? It's like, you have one of our clients is, I won't say the name, but it's like you've played these games if you play any kind of mobile games, and it's like you've got your app store icon. And so it's like, you're trying to encapsulate what's going to drive interest, what's going to encourage someone to click in and actually download that. And so you have your app store icon, one little point, but there's so many different, an infinite number of variations that you could have in terms of the app store icon. And so what PickFu does is you can upload different creative assets, whether it's product packaging, an app store icon, an image, a logo, whatever it might be. And people are not just voting on it, they're giving you detailed feedback as to why they chose that. And so that's a lot of the reason that I wanted to come and work with PickFu, is because I saw it and I was like, this is huge. This is massive. And the fact that there's, I don't think right now we don't really have very much competition. I don't expect that to last. I think just in the past 12 months, they're going to pop up. They're going to keep coming. But yeah, that's pretty much what PickFu does. And that's it.
Yeah, man, and it's great, all the fun stuff you can do with it. So in terms of using it, you just go into pickfu.com, right? And then you set up like a poll. Poll is like a question for this random audience, right? And you just upload. There's a couple different ways of doing it, but the way I usually do is I upload two different photos, often like a main image or an infographic or something, and then you just literally just say like, which of these two graphics is more clear, or which one do you like better, or which one are you more likely to click on? Whatever it is, some little prompt to ask people, and then and then you can like select your demographics. I only want women. I only want between 25 and 35, or our Amazon account owners, or our pet owners, or our parents, or our whatever, right? Then you just like click submit, and then like you hit refresh like 60 seconds later, and there's already 10 people who responded to the poll. I'm like, what? How did that work? And actually, I set up a poll right before we started this call. I started this 40 minutes ago. And let's see here. I asked for 50 applicants. Women who are parent owners is my demographic. And 47 out of 50 people have already responded inside of 40 minutes. So like, wow. It's crazy how fast this stuff happens.
Yeah. And that's the big thing is where I'm seeing, this comes from some background as an agency owner, where the companies and the sellers that are doing the best, where they're doing the best creatively is they're not saying, hey, I'm going to come up with one version of my product packaging. They're going to come up with many different versions. And the big name of the game now is all about iterative testing. So starting at something, and then you're like kind of chipping away until it gets to where it's going. And that's where PickFu is particularly helpful. Back in the day, you might just say, I just want one creative asset, and it's going to be really good on the first go. And now people are realizing that makes some sense, but what makes way more sense is to say, we're gonna go and where the magic happens isn't in the first draft. Where the magic happens is in revisions and getting feedback from real people. And that's really where the value, I think, of PickFu comes from.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll jump into a few ideas of what we can test on PickFu, but I'm curious, how do you, without revealing any like industry secrets or something, like where are these people coming from? This audience that responds so quickly?
Yeah, they're just normal people. So we use a third-party testing service, and we've got more than 10,000 people on the panel. Some of them are stay at home. Some of them are working. It's a pretty diverse panel. It's a pretty good cross section as well of the U.S. market. But they're just normal people. And when we're comparing it to other, I guess, testing platforms out there, we do a lot of interaction and training with our panel, and we let them know, hey, you're giving feedback that's going to be given to real businesses. This is going to have a real impact. So you need to be very thoughtful about what you're writing down. And they legitimately enjoy doing it. One of the other things that kind of sets PickFu apart is for the past 8 years that we've been around, we've had a machine learning algorithm that we've been training. And so one of the things that you'll notice when you're setting up a poll is you'll see a button for helpful or not helpful. And so if you're like, hey, this response is really good, you click helpful. And if you're like, this is garbage, you can click not helpful. And we've actually been training this AI learning algorithm to spot these people out. And people who give really helpful responses, they get a little bit of a bonus. And then people who give garbage responses, they're actually removed from the panel. So that's what we really focus on, curating a good panel that are going to give good responses.
That's funny. And it's funny because I heard on another, I think one of the founders was interviewed on Serious Seller podcast, with the Helium 10 podcast. And he mentioned that a lot of people just do this at their day job. Like yeah, they're like at jobs that don't have to like do anything. They're maybe like a security, I don't know, whatever, something where you don't have to be attentive for 60 minutes an hour kind of thing, where they only have to be attentive for like 10 or 15 minutes each hour. And they just do it on their in-between time. Because I've noticed that if you look at the demographic breakdown, like sometimes they're relatively high income people in relatively like, I don't know. I just was surprised that there's some like people who make serious income who are just trying to make a couple of dollars while answering a few questions on the internet.
And that's something that's really interesting. Like my vision eventually one day is I think that there's actually a natural knack and an inclination that people have that they want to participate in helping to grow businesses. And so what I actually like, my vision one day is that, you get all these notifications, you spend so much time on your phone that push notifications to the phone. You're like, okay, we got an option A or an option B. You're like, I click option A, you do a little voice memo about why you chose that. And people, if you think how much time people are spending on their phones, I think if there's actually a good compensation level that even if you are like a 6-figure earner, this is fun, this is exciting. And you're like, I want to kind of help out. And I think I think that's something we're looking at in the long term, because yeah, we don't want just like stay at home moms answering messages when we're trying to hit a target market that's much broader than that.
Yeah, for sure. And and it's cool too with the audience selection is that you can, I think I mentioned it earlier, but you can actually select different parts of the audience. So you can say parents only or pet owners only. And the nice thing is that every time you add something, we should mention the pricing a little bit actually. So it's like, oh, why don't you tell me the kind of the standard pricing for people?
Yeah, sure. So standard pricing is $1 per response, minimum of 50 responses. So $50 for a poll, not bad. I don't know if we've ever set you up as an affiliate, but we definitely should. We should like put somewhere down in the show notes if someone wants to get 50% off. We can definitely hook that up. But yeah, so $50 per poll, and then like you're saying, as you add on additional audience targeting, it's gonna increase the price as well, depending on how specific that group is. It all kind of just depends. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really straightforward pricing. We don't have any like we do have subscription options, but we wanted to make it that even if you're just using it for a first time, you don't need a plan. But if you're running more than 3 polls in a month, it makes sense. You're going to save money, like to get the subscription. And we now have prepaid credits that the bigger companies are using and aggregators, as much as $30,000 in prepaid credits. So it's all out there, and anyone can chat in, and we can make the best recommendation on what'll fit for them.
Fantastic. Yeah. So each poll, like you said, is about $50, and then a little bit extra when you add a few of the demographic breakdowns and stuff like that. But still, very, very affordable. Very crazy fast response too. So the link to get 50% off is in the show notes. You can also go to zonconpodcast.com/resources. That's the new website, the new resources tab. That is all of my collections of the stuff, the tools that I use personally. They're all vetted by me, and they're things I use every single month in my business. And PickFu is in there in that list. So go check that out, zonconpodcast.com/resources. And also the link to that discount code with PickFu is in the show notes. Now let's go ahead and jump into some of the things that we can test and some best practices on what to change on our listings and how to test them. So why don't you tell us? We talk to Amazon sellers, right? So people who are selling private label products, FBA on Amazon, right? What are kind of the big things that we should focus on with PickFu?
Yeah, so great question. I start off with two main categories. They're kind of related to each other. So we've got main image and we've got product packaging. Main image is a really slam dunk because there's really not that much that you can actually do inside of terms of service with main image, right? So it's like if I've got this water bottle, I can have this water bottle on a white background, but I could also, I could change the orientation and the position. I could maybe put some props next to it. I don't know what would fit with the water bottle, but you have some props. You maybe have a model drinking from the water bottle. And so what I like to do is I like to say, okay, go and test your main image and think about what are all of the different possibilities, different configurations you could have for that main image. What we've seen time and time again that is really, really effective is showing the product in use, right? So whether that is using relevant props or using a model, that is going to 9 times out of 10, that's what's going to win PickFu results. And it's also what's going to drive a higher click-through rate. It's going to work really well. Aside from showing the product in use, the thing that not a lot of people think about is product packaging, right? They just maybe take the default packaging from their manufacturer and they say, this is what I'm going to use. Product packaging is super, super valuable for a few different reasons. And it's something that you really want to get right first, because once you print your packaging and you send in those items to FBA, it's going to take a considerable amount of time before you can say, hey, I can change my product packaging again. Every single time that you print it, it's going to cost you money, right? This is going to be part of what your brand looks like. And so I tie that in as well with main images, because for a lot of products out there, the product packaging is the product itself. So any kind of consumer packaged goods, any kind of supplements, as well. The interesting thing about product packaging in the main image is, according to Amazon terms of service, you are not allowed to have text in your main image, but you can have text on your product packaging. And so we've done a lot of testing that we've seen where people are making their product packaging more and more visual. We've got a great case study that we did with Thrasio. I'm sure everyone has heard of Thrasio, a big aggregator in the space. And they acquired a pet deodorizer brand called Angry Orange. When they acquired the brand, it was doing $2 million in sales. They did a bunch of testing with product packaging, and they went from their old packaging to the new packaging. Now, this was not like a one and done. There was like more than 30 variations between the entire product line about what designs they wanted to choose. But when they finally got to and they used PickFu to test all of those to see what elements were actually people wanted to see most. When they changed their product packaging almost overnight, took that brand from $2 million to $20 million. And so like this really, really works. If you think about a pet deodorizer, right? Like I can't like show the liquid of the pet deodorizer. It's the packaging is the product. And so if you're selling something like that, product packaging is really big. Outside of that, yeah, we can obviously test like images. We can test your A+ content. What we try to say, and actually from the Thrasio case study, what their VP of creative and brand strategy said is that pretty much every major creative decision that they're making, they're using PickFu. And so that's what we recommend. It's like, it doesn't need to be for everything, but if you're going to make a major creative decision, you're going to say like, I'm going to change my packaging for, an MOQ of 500 or 1,000 units, maybe even multiple thousands of units. Go spend the $50, run a PickFu test, because this is something you want to get right. And there's been many times that we see people put something out and it's like, there's something wrong about it. And if they would have just, you can't go and ask your girlfriend or your partner, your spouse, whoever, like, hey, what do you think about this? Because it's not going to be good feedback. Just run it through PickFu, and it's like a nice little insurance policy. Maybe you won't end up changing it, but it's good to get some kind of feedback as to what the design is.
Yeah, those are great examples. And one thing we love Thrasio. We actually interviewed them on episode 59. Thrasio, this is who is going to give you $1 million for your business. So right. If you want to go listen to that podcast episode 59. So yeah, I love that, Anthony. And there's a few other things I wrote down. So the big thing, like you said, is that people we communicate through images mostly on the internet, right? There's obviously the actual copy itself. But rank and images, those are really the two big gotchas. I guess advertising too, it's kind of part of rank, right? And the graphics and images are just the things you really want to get right. So obviously main image, like you mentioned, and packaging, those are fantastic ideas. The infographics too, we've done that. We've kind of just put, like a little bit more kind of like 1, 2, 3 short bullet points and a little bit more of a kind of more information, still looking mobile friendly, right? But more sort of like 5 sentences rather than like 3 bullet points, and tested that and found really good feedback from that. Also test bullet points all the time. So we do both, we take our competition and take our bullet points and we just put them as text. We call them text poll, I guess, whatever, and just like have people read through. And the great thing is the insight you get in the comments are fantastic. They'll say, well, I like this one better because it has emojis, right? Which are not TOS compliant, but people like them. Or I like this one because it's more to the point, or I like this one because it mentions the health claims that are a lot more important to me. One thing that's been great too, we did product designs.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one, right? But like before you launch your product, a really good example that I like to give is you've got this kind of breakfast in bed tray and it's made of wood. And so you're like, okay, I do my product research. I see this is a really hot selling product, but how do I know? Should I do this in like a dark wood grain or should I do it in a light wood grain? Right. And this would be a pretty big thing to mess up. I talked to a client recently. They were launching a party supply kit. It was like a gender reveal party supply kit. And they were selling in a quantity that was not what people were wanting to buy, right? They were selling way too big of a quantity. Like no one needs a 200, especially now with COVID, no one needs a 200 set party supply kit. And so little things like that, it's like you found the product, but now I want to make sure that the specificity of how I'm actually selling this product is what people want. And it's a really, if you mess that up, you get a 1,000 MOQ for a 200 person party supply kit. And now you're sitting on all of these units and it's not going to sell because people really just wanted a 25 person party supply kit. That is, that for product design is very helpful.
Yeah, and kind of aesthetic designs too. So my friend, a friend who does little bandanas for dogs, and she has different patterns and different little things, whatever. And she ended up using a poll to figure out. She created like 6 or 7 different designs, had a professional design person make it, and then just tested them, just asked like, which ones do you like? Which ones are the best? Which ones, do you like this one or this one, whatever.
Right.
And it's great because you get that crazy fast feedback. You can also do these things on Facebook and other social media platforms. We do the same kind of thing with our own audience because we know it's a little bit more targeted because it's like our audience. When we're coming into new spaces where a general audience, kind of a little more of a general audience rather than our own audience, we love PickFu for that.
Well, and one other quick hack that I'll give you that very few people know about PickFu is if you have your own audience, you can actually use PickFu, the PickFu platform, and you can send out like an email to your own audience, and you can actually have people respond. You just have to, instead of choosing our own audience, you want to click your own audience, and then you can actually send it out. So we've got clients that they've got mini chat groups with thousands of members. They've got email lists with recurring people. And so what they'll actually use is the PickFu platform. So people will vote and you can get the feedback, and it's all categorized in a really nice, beautiful way. And that's totally free. We don't charge at all for that, but not many people know.
Oh, I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So can I get like a general audience? I guess I could just create two polls then, one for like your audience and one for my audience, and send it out.
Yeah. And what we'll say too is like, obviously, if you are selling a specific product and the audience is like, these are people that have bought the product and it's going to be best. When you're entering a new market, a general audience is great. But if you've got an audience already, this is something that not many people know about. We don't talk about it very much, but it is really valuable, really, really valuable.
Interesting. Okay, I know what I'm doing this week. So that's cool. I did not know that. So
it's totally free.
So we find that like Instagram stories are kind of the best place to ask people, right? Because we don't want to make a post about it because it's not really like we have like our post is kind of like our beautiful feed. We want it to keep very like aesthetically pleasing. You don't want to just have like a bunch of kind of like answer me this for the next 24 hours as a post. And so stories are fantastic. And you get like a little bit more of the kind of the more involved audience in stories, right? And it's great because you can, again, they last 24 hours, you can post it out and then you get the responses relatively quick, not as quick as PickFu usually. But I did not know that. I think we're going to do that this week and try it out.
Good luck. Yeah, it definitely works.
Awesome. Maybe I'll splice in at the end of this episode, like the results of us doing that.
Cool. Sounds good.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see. What else is there to talk about PickFu? So best practices. So if you ever like kind of studied the scientific method and trying to do an unbiased question, whether it's market research, the kind of the philosophy of market research or like the scientific method, you want to build an experiment, a test that isolates variables and is as unbiased as possible. So, Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about like kind of the best practices on how to set up tests and how to kind of like word them and stuff?
Yeah. So obviously we want to try to have as unbiased of a question as possible. So you don't want to lead anyone. You don't want to say, hey, I'm even trying to think of a leading question because it's been a while. It's like,
do you want this dumb blue one or the great red one? Choose which one's better.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's a fantastic example. So what I also try to do with my questions, and this is something that, I really brought to the team and I think is actually really important, is having some context. So a lot of people will just say, which image do you prefer? But you got to think a lot of the reason that PickFu is so fast is because the panel is instructed to be fast. They're instructed to be quick. And so instead of just saying, hey, which image do you prefer? I'm going to say, hey, which water bottle packaging do you prefer? This is a software company, like give some context as to what you're selling. So it's like, hey, which image is most clear to explain the feature of this product? I always just look for like examples that I have around me. So it's like, I've got this Bluetooth mouse and it's like, which image best explains the compatibility features with this USB mouse, right? It's like saying, hey, I can connect to a laptop or I can connect to a tablet, blah, 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 whatever it is. But it's really important to give that context to say, hey, I'm not just saying, what do you prefer? But like, it's for this type of product or this type of market. And that helps the panel they put themselves in that scenario and they're like, okay, now I know what I'm talking about. Now I know what the context of the scenario is. So ask the question, be very direct. Don't add in any kind of leading or filler things, but just, hey, what do you prefer? Here's the context of what we're talking about.
Nice. Yep, that's perfect. That's perfect. And well, actually, I had a question. I'm not sure how this works. When you have the option A, option B, when you guys give that to the survey, to the panel, as you call them, do you guys like alternate those two, or does A always end up being on the left side and B always ends up being on the right side?
That's a really good question. I actually think that it's not randomized. It is just option A or option B. It's just what is presented to them. The question, yeah, I guess like the real question from that is there some kind of inherent bias between A and B? I think probably not, just because it's so visual. Like your brain is going to overpower any kind of, yeah, it's like you see something and it's like, yeah, this is option A, but it's going to be clear. And the thing that always blows my mind is actually the consistency in responses. So like I just wanted to check when I first started working at PickFu. I didn't do this as an individual, but when I first started working here, obviously I have access to, as many polls as I want. I wanted to see like, okay, how close would the results be if I did the same thing like 15 times? And it's like damn close. Like it blows my mind like how similar the human brain works in terms of preference options from a visual standpoint. So I don't think, yeah, right now I know we don't randomize. There's probably not as much of a reason to randomize just because there is some justice and there's some justification for why people are going the way that they are.
I never really saw a bias in the. I've always kind of wondered that. I've never really seen a bias of like left bias and right bias, or A bias over B bias or whatever. I just always kind of wondered about that. I never saw any.
I will
FAQ on
I will
that.
say though, like when I'm personally for my own businesses, if I'm running more options, we have two different options. We have one where it's like ranked choice voting. And so you're essentially saying like, this is my first, second, third, fourth, because you can put in up to 8 options at a time. So you can do ranked choice voting or you can do head to head. And it's much more expensive to do head to head. But basically what it's going to do is instead of ranked choice voting, it's going to put all possible combinations against each other 1-to-1. So like if I'm doing something really important for myself, like recently for one of my other businesses that I'm working on, I was doing a logo. And so I literally did a head to head with the logo combinations. And it was like 6 different versions. And it was like you do every version versus each other. But that's something really important that I'm doing. Like once I trademark this logo, this is, I'm not going to change it. So it's more expensive like that. I think like ranked choice voting is good. It's really, really a solid idea, but it's also not going to be, I think the most accurate is going to be a head to head poll against every single possible option.
Yeah, we ended up doing we had a couple different like font styles we were going to do. I actually did this for a presentation, so I can share with you guys the poll, and maybe I can drop a link in the show notes with the poll here. But we ended up doing like a hand soap and lotion bottle, like a little bottle that you would put next to your sink. And this is before COVID. It would have been really relevant for for this last year. We had actually produced this product. Yeah, we created a couple different setups on the how the font would look on the product, and then we did sort of like a championship poll. We had 8 different designs, and we went 2v or 1v1, all 8 of them, and then championship round to the next round, and so on and so on. So it was a fun little example of what you can do with this kind of stuff, which is great.
Super smart.
Alrighty, guys. So again, big advocate of PickFu. I love the service. Very quick and easy. Very cheap service. Go check it out. Worth setting up an account and getting a few polls going and getting that listing optimized and those images picked and those boxes picked and that design optimized. So if you want to check that out, there's a 50% off coupon in the show notes. Go ahead and check it out. Now, Anthony, I want to ask you the same 3 questions that we ask everybody.
Okay.
So you're a serial entrepreneur and you've built several businesses. You're a digital nomad. You've gone around the world. You exited a business and now you're working as a liaison for PickFu. What's your big why? What drives you to do these things?
Yeah. So for me personally, it's really, for me, it's about, there's something really exciting about building something and about saying, that's mine. Like when I was young, my dad, he did like a lot of construction work. And when I first started off, I really disliked helping out. But then at some point it just clicked to me that this is actually really cool to think that like I can build a structure, I can look back at it and say, that thing, like I built that and it's going to last for a long amount of time. And so for me, that's my big why when it comes to building companies is like, working with PickFu, working with the creative agency, it's like I want to build things right now here. It's like super crazy, but I'm at a peony farm. It's these flowers that they bloom for a couple weeks every year. And like I got involved with this business because a high school teacher of mine that I knew had these peonies. And last year we were talking when I was back, just consequentially through COVID, and he's like, "Oh, I've got all these flowers, and there's not really many events, so no one's going to come and buy the flowers." So I was like, "Dude, why don't we come and have people take pictures, and it'll be like a big Instagrammable thing." So I put together a little website, and I built it out, and we scaled it and growed it. And it's like, for me, what's really, really cool is like there's just something fun about you set this thing up, you build it, you scale it, you grow it, and you're like, that's mine. That's my why for me. And it doesn't have anything to do with the money. For me, I try to find, and there's a lot of things in my life that I turn down, and I'm like, I could go and do this, but if for me, it's like, I know this is not the best advice to give to other people in terms of business. Don't go based on passion, go based on like, focusing and finding a niche, things like that. For me, I go all based on passion. And if I'm not really passionate about the product, then it's not going to matter to me. Like the reason I came and approached PickFu to work with PickFu is because I believed in the product. I really believe. And so if I can get up and I can sell that product, it doesn't feel like work. I can just get up and talk about it all the time. And that's what I like doing is, yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's great. So passion led creator.
It's not for everyone, but for me, I couldn't do anything else. And I've had other jobs where I'm working on things that are not based on passion. And it's just like, at some point, it's like, especially once you start to make a little bit of money, it's like, you really ask yourself, why am I even doing this? And I can't even get myself out of bed to go and do things that I don't really enjoy, which is terrible to say, but it's just the truth.
Nice. I love that. That's great. That's good. Passion is, I think, a core driver of people who are very motivated. So that's fantastic. What is one piece of media you want to share with us?
Okay, so probably one of my favorite books that was introduced to me by a mentor that very few people have read, but more people should read. It's called Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. It's a book by Steven Pinker. And basically, it starts with human history from thousands of years ago. And it pretty much talks about how even though we might turn on the news and think that our world is in this crazy, chaotic place and everyone is just out to hurt everyone, that if you look at it from a factual standpoint, right now is the most peaceful time, the least violent time of any point in human history. And we are actually so incredibly fortunate to be living right now. And that if you turn on the news, it's going to make you seem like everyone hates each other, but it's just not the reality from any kind of metric, from any kind of standpoint. And when you read this book, it really puts it in perspective that we're so freaking lucky. We're so freaking lucky to be alive right now. And we just don't even have to deal with 99% of the things that have happened earlier in human history. So it's not a business book, but I think it is really, especially for someone that watches the news and gets stressed out and thinks, oh my gosh, the whole thing is we're just going downhill. We're not going downhill. Not at all. Not even close. And I thought it was very motivational. It's a great book.
Okay. So you are one of the only people I've ever met who's also read that book. So I actually met Steven Pinker when he was on his book tour promoting that book like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Crazy. It's an amazing book. Like it was introduced to me by a friend because I kept saying some real negative shit. And he was basically like, dude, you got to read this book. You got to check it out. And then I read it and I was like, we're so lucky. Like I don't have anything to complain about. Everything is, I mean, it's really puts it in perspective. Like, dude, thousands, we're talking about, don't get me wrong, COVID is tragic. But like, if you would look at polio, and this is just a few decades ago, we're talking about not only, huge amounts of people dying, but we didn't even reach peak vaccination levels until like 6 years after it started. So to think that we did with COVID inside of 12 months, we don't have problems today the way that we had problems a long time ago. And when you put that in perspective, it really just changes things. Like, okay, maybe we should stop complaining about how bad things are and actually let's move forward and see what we can actually really do because we've come a long way.
Yes. that was the big takeaway for me on that book, was that like the world, like you said, the world doesn't suck. It sucks a little bit.
Right,
But
of course.
it
I mean,
feels
it's
like
not
it sucks a
perfect.
lot
It's
of
not
it,
perfect.
but it's a little bit. And
Yeah.
the big thing that was like really motivating from that is that there's lots of issues we still have to solve. So that no one is saying that the world is perfect. No one is saying that we're heaven. No one's saying there's lots of things we need to do still, right? So no one's saying that there isn't. The big thing though that I got from that was that it was motivating to say, wait, we are doing things to better the human condition, and it's working mostly.
Yeah.
It's working. Like we do things, we try. People actually mostly kind of sort of care about each other, and they kind of are trying to build a better place, and we're kind of doing it, and it's kind of working. I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think generally we're way too hard on ourselves. We have way too high standards for we want things like as especially being back in the US, everyone wants things to happen right away. And it's like I understand social justice and I understand that you want equality among people, but like this stuff takes time. And if you look at it from the scope of, well, things just aren't happening fast enough, you just have to look back in history to realize things are actually happening very quickly. It's as fast as things can, and there's some kind of limitation for what humans will allow for progress. But we've made a lot of progress, and you have to accept that we've made and sometimes I think really too, it's like especially after reading the book, it's like I wish more people would read it, because sometimes you look at humanity, it's like we're so close to being where we need to go. But then there's also this other side where it's like if you don't have the perspective of the past, it would be very easy to think that we're not close, but like we're so close. And if we can all just like stay with it for another few, like we're getting very close. Yeah. So I love that book. I've never met anyone else who's read it as well. So yeah, definitely go and check it out.
It's not very business related, but I shouldn't focus too much on that. But yes, read that book. I love it. It's a great book. Similar one to that one is also Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, I think. And then Homo Sapien and Homo Deus, they're both sort of in that same niche of kind of like world history, how it used to be and how it is now kind of thing. So those are just
And if you don't know as well, they just put Homo Sapiens into a really interesting format, which is another great business idea if anyone is out there, of actually taking a business book or like this kind of theoretical book and making it into a graphic novel. And so you can actually get Homo Sapiens now as a graphic novel. I'm not into it, but like really cool idea.
That's awesome. And is it someone mentioned it's like targeting kids, or is it for adults?
I don't know who the target market is, but I think like taking the concept of something like Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'm surprised I haven't seen this yet, but taking that and converting it to a graphic novel with a 4-hour work week, that is like a slam dunk business model in my mind. And I don't think enough people are doing it.
That's awesome. You know what? Rich Dad Poor Dad, they made a board game out of it.
I've
just
seen
to
that,
kind of like to target sort of the teenager kind of middle school age kids, just to kind of give them a little intro into it. So wow, nice, man. That's a good book choice. Tell us, Anthony, what is one thing that Amazon sellers can do today? Okay,
well, obviously I'm going to do a little plug here. What the thing is, because I know this because I've sold on Amazon and I'm a business owner. You always have this laundry list of things that you want to do, the things that you should be doing for your business, and then there's the reality of how much time you have. And so if there's one thing that I would say to start to do right now, I would say is to take a really deep look at your product packaging, right? It's really, really important. I think people, they have good packaging, but they don't have amazing packaging. And my biggest tip that you can have is like, if you're selling a physical product, I was just, I love going every time I'm back in the States. It's not the same when you're outside of the US, but when you're back in the States, I walk through the aisles of like a CVS or a Walmart or wherever, and I'm blown away. Like some of the packaging is really good. Some of it's not so good. And if you think about, have an honest discussion with yourself. And if you go through the store, the aisles at a store, and you think that, okay, would my packaging, does it look at least as good, if not better than this? If you are being very honest with yourself and you're like, actually, this is pretty garbage, like it's really not that good, go and redo it. And I think too many people have subpar packaging. And the really good example that I gave earlier from Thrasio kind of really hits home, because I think all of us would love to have a $2 million brand, right? Like a brand that's doing $2 million a year. But if you look at like the before and after of what their packaging was, like it was garbage packaging. It was not good at all. And so be really critical with yourself and think about every single element, every single pixel on the packaging. Ask yourself, why is it here? What is this doing to convince someone either about the features, about how my product works, or to like get them to make a buying decision? And if you're looking at things and you're like, well, this doesn't have much purpose, this doesn't have much function, be really aggressive and go and do new product packaging, because it really does. Like people buy product packaging matters. It matters a tremendous amount.
Perfect, Anthony. That's a great response. I love it. So guys, check out pickfu.com. Anthony, I appreciate you. We heard about your story of being a serial entrepreneur, being a digital nomad, and how you got connected to PickFu. And of course, we learned all sorts of great ways to use PickFu to change your main images, your graphics, your bullet points, your packaging, best practices. And of course, we got to hear your big why and also the Better Angels of Our Nature book. So Anthony, I appreciate you being here and hope to see you around.
Thanks so much, Andrew. It's been fun. See you soon.
If you have not left us an iTunes review, I would really, really appreciate it if you went to iTunes and left a 5-star review for us. I love reading them. I read every single one. In fact, this one right here, really funny name, B Dizzlefizzle. B Dizzlefizzle. Thank you for leaving a review. You wrote, so helpful to get up and running a successful business. So much insight and guidance piece by piece on how to build a successful Amazon business and selling on Amazon. B Dizzlefizzle, thanks so much for leaving that review. It really helps us spread the message and spread the value, let people come and find our content. So thank you so much, Dizzlefizzle. And if you too found some Vizzle value, then please go do what Dizzlefizzle did and dizzle us a review on iTunes.